Welcome to the Customer Catalyst Conference 2021, to our session focusing on customer health, with Andrew Carrick, Chief Customer Success Officer at Automic Group. Now here's the thing about Automic Group. The company was invented because the founders saw an opportunity for change, because they saw an inferior service that could be improved. For the Customer Catalyst Conference 2021, Andrew Carrick runs a masterclass on how customer health measurements are driving customer experience and growth, how to enhance customer experience scores, and growth multipliers.
Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to the Customer Catalyst Conference. My name is Andrew Carrick, and I'm going to be running a session right now on how client health measurements are driving customer experience and growth. So, a little about myself. I live in Sydney on the Northern Beaches with my family of four, and we've recently emerged from a 4-month lockdown, so very happy to be back out in the open and hopefully getting back to some semblance of normalcy. I've got almost 2 decades of customer-facing roles, broadly across sales, account management, customer success, operations, and that's within the financial markets and governance, risk and compliance areas. And I'm super passionate about surfing, barbecuing on charcoal and growth, not only in terms of our clients and the business, but also importantly for the employees that I have the pleasure of working with. As far as what Automic does, we are Australia's preferred securities registry. And what that means in its shortest sense is that we manage listed and unlisted companies' share registers and all of the corporate actions, dividends, distributions that come along with those. We pride ourselves on our technology and our agility to create change, as well as quality and security. And the thing I am most passionate about within the organisation, hence my title as Chief Customer Success Officer, is really that our customers' success is really our success, and it's at the heart of what we do and what we stand for. So, for today, I wanted to run through a bit of a practical guide around measuring client health, and as a result of measuring that health, what to do with that data and how to drive the experience that your customers are actually having. So as far as the session goes today, I'm going to run through firstly what client health is and different ways of measuring it. We'll also take a look at different ways of actually understanding what that data means as far as health scoring goes, whether, at one end of the spectrum, sort of sophisticated health scoring versus basic traffic lighting. Then we'll take a look at what to actually do with that data once you've uncovered it and how to actually put it into practice with your clients. And how to drive up customer experience if it is an area that you identify through your health measurements as something that needs some attention. And finally, we'll cap off today's session with a little bit on growth multipliers. So client health, really not dissimilar to a human's health in that there's lots of different ways that you can measure your client's health. Some of the key ones that have been around for a little while now are things like spending trends, i.e. looking over a period of time as to whether your client has been buying more or less. The all-important kind of churn indicator and index to actually understand how clients are, if you are losing clients, why they might be leaving you or why they might be reducing the costs that they have with your particular company. Product usage, which is massive to uncover not only what clients are using, but almost more importantly, what they aren't using. And I think we've all had experiences where there's been a red hot particular feature or upgrade that needed to be done for a particular client. We've put the product team under pressure, but as a result, 6 months later have found that particular enhancement has not been utilised as much as we thought it may have been, and in for an awkward conversation with your product team. Another one is the CSM sentiment, which is really important, and that gives you an understanding from your CSM's perspective as to how they feel their relationship is with the client, and how things are kind of going broadly. Another one that's sometimes overlooked is actually looking at the company or the client's financial performance. If they are a listed entity, being able to look at the stock exchange releases to understand how they're performing, or any other bits and pieces that you might be able to find on the internet or on the media to really understand how they are performing against their financial goals. An increasing sort of area is ESG, and understanding what that client's commitment might be to ESG initiatives, and how they might be driving against them. It's really becoming something that is increasingly important for all companies to do their part, and it will give you a good indicator as to where they're sort of heading longer term. And finally, the NPS, or the customer satisfaction survey. I've got some thoughts around NPS, and my broad view is that, you know, a once-off NPS survey per year is not necessarily as helpful as different touch points, different surveys, different things are actually testing clients after different junctures of their customer journey. But if you don't have that in place just yet, as far as different types of surveys for different types of activities, an NPS or a CSAT is a good starting point, but I would just hazard that it is a little bit one-dimensional at times. So there are lots of awesome customer success software programs out there that can really give you very sophisticated health scoring, right down to, you know, specific numbers and decimals as to how your particular client is tracking. But not all of us, and particularly in sort of startup or scale-up world, have the luxury of being able to invest in those sorts of software programs straight off the bat. First, we're sort of proving that we have the revenue and the client base, and those things will hopefully come later. But a basic traffic light system can also work really well as a starting point, i.e. having, you know, good clients that are of good health as green, any that might have little niggling issues or things that you're aware of that you do need to solve for as yellow, and those that are red hot and very much about to leave you as red. And that can also work. You don't need to have the best customer success software in the world to actually measure client health. I think the really important thing though is how you understand and gather that data, right? So by, you know, designing a formal kind of health call or quarterly business review with your clients, depending on the scale of your business and the sorts of clients that you have, and then making sure that there is a process where that information is recorded in your CRM system so that not only the other CSMs can see that, but is also shared out with other broader divisions within the business, importantly, sales, marketing, and product, so that they can start to understand what the clients are actually telling the CSMs. But once you record it, what are you actually going to do with that information? The data that you uncover is really important, because it will start to inform where your customer journey is going wrong or going right. Typically, for companies that do have higher churn rates, the onboarding is usually a bit of a hotspot where it needs some attention, because if you can make sure that you deliver a high quality implementation that is ultimately over delivering on the expectations that the sales team has actually set with that client, typically you're going to have a really, really good relationship with that client, and they will remember that experience for a long time after that initial onboarding area. But importantly, then post-implementation, what are you actually going to do with that client? How are you going to agree on a partnership as you move forward as to how you will interact with them, how often that might be, what sort of format that might be, And again, it really depends on the type of product that you are supporting, whether it is super white glove and high touch, where you will be having kind of face-to-face quarterly style meetings, or where you might have a number of, hundreds or thousands of clients where more of a tech touch approach is required to understand very quickly a broad range of opinions as to how that client health is actually tracking. Once you actually do your first round of health scoring, and you in the example of the traffic light system, it's typically a lot easier to move clients from the sort of yellow to the green as opposed to the red from the green. So, my suggestion is that is where typically CSMs should be spending the bulk of their time. However, some of the biggest advocates and proponents that I've come across have started off as extremely red, and it's the actions that the team has taken to solve for the problem, whatever it might be, that has actually turned them around and made them into a huge advocate for the software itself. The other thing is maturity modeling. So the idea with a maturity model is if your organization has multiple services that a client could potentially purchase for you, you can design a sort of a model based on the profile of that client as to currently where they're at, i.e. how many products they ultimately purchase for you from right now versus where you would like them to be at some point in the future. So a kind of a current maturity model score versus an aspirational one. And then understanding and game planning with your colleagues internally as to how you might be able to move that client up towards the higher end of that aspirational maturity model. The final point here is speed kills, and this was a concept that was introduced to me by a colleague almost a decade ago that deals with the idea that when you actually uncover an issue or a problem, it's really important to move as quickly as you possibly can to put that issue to bed. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to resolve whatever that particular issue is within 5 minutes, but it means that you've responded, you've heard the client, you're playing back to them what the issue is, and then you keep them updated over time as you move through the resolution process. Because I feel that there's nothing worse than a client kind of telling you that there's an issue and then the team kind of going to ground and trying to work out how to solve for that without letting the client know that they've heard and understand how important that is to us, that we will fix it for them. If you identify through your customer health scoring that you have an issue with customer experience, there's a few ideas that I have as to ways to actually fix that. The first is making sure that you're being outcome-led. This is not something new, but it's certainly something that within the customer success community has really framed a lot of the discussions, the way that companies and teams will actually go to market when they're talking to their client base. And really the idea there is not being focused on what you or your particular company wants as an outcome, but actually understanding right up front, even potentially in the sales process, what the actual outcomes are that customer is looking for by signing up to your particular software, service, whatever it may be. And if you keep that as your kind of framework, as the way that you make decisions, how you go to market, how you further scale, then you'll make sure that that's always your kind of North Star as far as the outcomes for the client, not for you. I'm a big fan of kind of professionalism and uniformity, and the idea that every day you kind of show up, that you're giving your best self when you're dealing both internally within your internal clients and colleagues, but also externally. And that means that your written communications, your verbal communications, everything across the board is professional and also uniform, so that whoever that particular client comes into contact with from your company, they can feel that professionalism and uniformity across the organization. Another good area is to actually conduct an external asset audit. to look at all the different assets, i.e., collateral, the slide decks, whatever it may be that you're using that are customer facing, to make sure that they are, fitting that customer journey, outcome led, and again, consistent across the board. There's nothing worse than having different CSMs using different sets of outdated decks. That version control is really, really important when you're dealing with your clients. The fourth one is around kind of surveying and understanding what's going on. And I talked a little bit earlier about NPS and my view that just doing that once a year may be a little bit one-dimensional. For me, I think when you're talking about customer experience and trying to understand how to improve it or how to ultimately fix it, you need to continually survey and review and understand what the customer's saying, what is that customer's voice. And you do that by, as I said here, weaponizing your CRM, making sure that your CRM is the one source of truth. There's lots of organizations out there that have, scant information in different disparate systems and can be really hard to find, something as simple as a client list. Whereas if you make sure that your CRM system is the key source of truth across the organization, where client intelligence, survey results, all of those sorts of things live, you'll find that the flow of information and the ability to nail your customer experience will continue to get better and better and evolve over time because you've got that one central area. The other thing I would say is be open-minded and pragmatic. When you're going to change something around the way that you go to market, the way that you look after clients, it's important to kind of break out of the mold of, this has worked for us and this is the way we kind of do it. Be prepared to be challenged. Be prepared to listen and take on board the good ideas that you hear around the table, regardless as to what level or whoever the person is that's telling you that. So once you've pivoted to a more outcome-led approach, that means you can start to pivot from your typical kind of client-vendor relationship to more of a partnership where, yes, you are trusted, yes, you're able to give them useful information about other clients that might be in similar industries. But more importantly, I think it just elevates the conversation that you can have a straight talk conversation. They can tell you if there's an issue that they're experiencing, something that's happening within finance or things that you haven't spotted coming up. If you've been able to actually elevate that relationship, you'll find that the customer will actually be far more willing to share critical information with you, and will also be on your side if something is coming that might cause the particular spend on your particular product to be put under the spotlight. They'll let you know and they will support you to make sure that will still stay in place when the next year's financial budget comes around. Secondly, once you understand those key health metrics, you should be able to get ahead of what's coming. And that might not only be what the client tells you, it also might not only be what, if you are using bespoke customer success software, what that software is predicting, but you might be able to get ahead of it yourself by understanding the data and looking at it and then getting in touch with the client before the client ultimately tells you. Once you've also nailed both, the experience and the customer journey mapping, you'll also actually understand when are the best junctures during the course of a calendar or a financial year as to when to actually approach that client to have a growth conversation to understand where you may be able to assist them in other areas. There's nothing worse than, a CSM, an account manager, a salesperson calling that decision maker at a poor time because of whatever the series of different things that might be happening during the course of their day, to have that conversation about growth, and they've just got, they've got no time for you, and ultimately it just has a negative impact on that relationship. So once you actually understand what they're up to, what are the important kind of events over the course of the next 6 or 12 months, you'll then be able to understand when is the best time to actually approach that client for that growth conversation. And ultimately, once you've got all of these things humming, then the kind of key point there is that they will turn into advocates for you. And instead of spending a whole lot of time and money kind of strategizing about marketing campaigns and cookie campaigns and the various things that we do to get prospects' attention, your existing customers will start to promote the company and the solution for you and tell other people about it. And then that kind of referral process will just start to take off as those customers go out and do that legwork for you. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If any of you have additional questions for me that you weren't able to ask today, please add me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to connect with you and look forward to a conversation together. Thank you so much.